Hey there, color pencil enthusiasts, and welcome back to my YouTube channel where we explore the wonderful world of colored pencils. I'm Jeanette, a professional color pencil artist, and today we have a sweet treat in store for you as I demonstrate how to draw a donut using colored pencil blending techniques for realism. We'll get into making this so real that by the time you're finished your drawing, you'll want to eat it. So grab your pencils and let's get started. First things first, let's gather the necessary supplies. You'll need a drawing pad or paper, an eraser, and a pencil sharpener. I'm working with Luminance and Pablo from Caran d'Ache and Polychromos. Pencils that I love, but you can use any pencils, just match the colors from the guide that I provide here. The paper I'm using is Stonehenge white paper, a great paper for colored pencil art. I've included a color swatch and pressure guide to help you along, and as always, I'll post the corresponding color with the pressure in the video. You can access the outline of the donut and the color swatch on my website if you need to print them off. The link is in the description box below. Once you have your supplies, we're ready to move on. We'll start off with number 1, blending for realistic textures, creating the lower half of the donut with layers and simple textures. I'll start with outlining the pre-drawn donut with a gray for the plate and green for the donut, and then we're going to use a kneaded eraser to remove the graphite so it doesn't muddy and mix in with the colored pencils. Our main color palette for the lower half of the donut is oranges and brown reds. These colors are complementary colors to the green-blue icing that we're going to be doing on top. By adding these groups of complementary colors together, we're creating vibrancy and dimension to the image. I'll begin by lightly coloring the area using the lightest color of cream and a pressure of 1. This base layer sets the color temperature direction for the subsequent layers. For more on layering, I've got a great video on how to do 5 different layering techniques, and I'll put the link in the description box below for you. Before we add the textures of the cooked dough, we'll build the shade layers to create the curves of the donut. I always like to add the shades or shadows first, as I find this lets the texture integrate better with the overall subject. Next, I'll layer on a warm light brown or raw umber at a pressure of 1 and begin to emphasize the area in the center of the donut where the dough splits, usually when it's cooked. Let's talk about this subject and blending for a second. Blending is an amazing technique that combines and merges different colors through layers and drawing with various strokes to create a smooth transition or gradient effect on areas of your subject. It's that all-important method used to create depth and dimension in a drawing. Blending can be achieved through various methods such as layering, which is stacking colors on top of colors, or burnishing, a method where you apply heavy pressure to the colored pencil to create a smooth and shiny surface, and using specialized blending tools like blending pencils, solvent markers, other pencils, or even solvent liquids. The goal is to eliminate visible pencil strokes and create a seamless blended appearance. In our subject, there are 2 blending methods. One is more textury where the dough is, and one smoother with icing. We're going to approach each of them with different blending methods. If you find that you need to do a pre-test or color swatch chart, I highly recommend them. Finding correct colors is never easy, so test if that is easier for you. I'm just building up a little bit of the gray right now, right underneath the donut, and this is just to help me to distinguish between the donut itself and the plate underneath. I'm going to add a little bit more gray a little bit later. I'm adding in a dark red-brown along the areas where the icing and the donut meet in the darkest shadows. And then I'm going to add in a medium red-brown along the lower part of the donut to create the shadows and form the curve of the donut. I'll keep using this medium red-brown and use it to create more shadows under the icing. I'm also going to switch my pressure between 1, 2, and 3 to start to emphasize areas of the contour of the donut surface. I want to make it look like there's some bumps and grooves on it, and this is a great way of doing that. I'll now switch over to a dark brown and use pressure 1 and 2 to keep creating those shadows on the bottom and under the icing. It's important to know that this drawing actually took me about 4 hours, so what you're seeing is very fast. Take your time, go slow, do lots of layering, and use good pressure. Pencil strokes I'm using to layer my colors are contour lines, hatch lines, and scribbles, which are small circles that can easily get into grooves and tight areas of the drawing. I love using this combination of pencil strokes. It allows for a lot of control with the pencil. It also allows me to add more or less pressure and thickness of the color application, as I can make the scribbles larger or smaller, and I love that. Yay! That's a yay moment for sure. I'm going to add some crispy orange right now at the pressure between 1 and 2. This is the color that's going to really make the dough look like it's being cooked golden brown. Keep using the same layering methods with a change of pressure to emphasize areas that are indented, use more pressure, and areas that are coming out use less pressure. So as we move away from the light, we want it to go a little bit darker. As we come towards the light, we want it to go a little bit lighter. I'm going to switch between two colors, a medium orange at the beginning, and then go a little bit lighter on the orange. I'm mixing in some warm gray right now at a pressure of 1 and 2, and then I'm going to put on top of that cream color that we started with the whole thing. The idea with the cream color is it's going to be used as a blending pencil, so it's going to help to blend all of the colors that have already been laid down. We've got a fair amount of layers right now, so it can be a little bit complicated, but we want to get that dough just right, and we have a little bit more to go. I'll add in a terracotta or burnt ochre color at a pressure of 1, and this color will help to develop the cooked dough appearance. Again, it's all part of that process. And on top of this, we'll add the light red brown, which is part of the red brown group that we've already applied. So we've already applied a dark red brown, a medium red brown, and this is going to be our light red brown. So this is where things start to get super fun. Like it hasn't been fun already, right? But I'm just talking about the textury stuff. I love doing this stuff. I'll switch back to the burnt ochre at a pressure of 3 to start adding some very defined textures. So as I'm drawing with this pencil, I want you to add some extra pressure and then blend that into the surrounding colors. It's going to look like little bumps, and if you can, try to do it randomly. Stop and start the video if that's going to help you to see what I'm doing. I'm almost creating dots of color, but I'm going a little bit darker, and again, just blend that out. Now that I've added the texture areas, I'm going to use the cream color to blend the colors together. And then I'm going to jump between this lighter cream color and a bit of a darker cream color. And I'm going to use those specifically for blending. So you'll notice that I'm not actually working on doing texture. I'm working to blend what I've already done together. So there's a process that happened. We put down some layers at the very beginning. Then we added some darker layers and we used the cream color to blend. And then we came in, we did some texturing, and we're doing the cream color again. This is what I call tonal blending. Tonal blending is about using a pencil color which is within the same tonal ranges or color group that you're actually working with. And this actually helps to blend the colors together, and you don't really notice that it's happening. So it's an excellent way to blend pencils and blend your colors. I'm going to be using a yellow and a medium orange in the next part of this. Again, I'm just layering right now and just doing some blending. And this is going to actually help to warm up whatever I've done, which is going to make it look like cooked dough. So add a little bit of the orange, add a little bit of the yellow. And I'm working at a pressure of about 1, between a 1 and a 2. So you can see as I'm adding those colors, they're just barely showing up. And I'm not necessarily putting that orange everywhere. I'm only going to be putting it in strategic places underneath where the icing is, and just maybe adding a little bit more texture with it. Finally, I'm going to wrap up with a terracotta color and also a little bit of dark brown. And this is just to create a little bit more emphasis on texturing and a little bit more on the shadows. So yay, fantastic. We're finished with the donut, and we're going to do a little bit of work on adding some shadow for the plate. And then we're going to dive into the icing and the top part of the donut. So just a quick word on blending with solvents or other like blending pencils. You notice I didn't use any method other than a tonal blending pencil. I do this specifically with any subject that's matte or has a lot of texture and bumps on it, like this dough, or portrait faces and skin, or botanical leaves and petals that are also matte. I use the texture of the paper to enhance the subject, and guarantee if you do that, you'll have lots of success. It's a really cool way of actually working with your materials in a way that helps one of them over the other. Okay, we're going to dive into the top part of the donut right now, and I'm using a dark red brown, and then I'm also going to be using a dark brown. And this is what I'm going to use just to create the hole in the donut. And I'm just going to mix the two of them together. There's not going to be really anything special about this. I just want to kind of keep it quite dark. So we're diving into doing the icing. This section is going to be all about layering and blending. We'll blend with pencils, solvents, and other, so we can get a solid color. That's the opposite of what we just did. Icing is blue-green, so our base layer is going to be a very pale blue. We don't need to do any blending with solvents at this stage. I usually add solvents towards the end, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Remember, base layers can be very loose and flat, and no need to add shadows or develop it beyond a simple and quick layering of color at a pressure of 1. After I've added the base layer of that light blue, I'm going to jump into using a fairly dark blue-green color, and I'm going to be using this for edging around the high reflection area that's in the center of the donut icing. And I'm making sure that my pencil is super sharp, and I'm just very, very carefully going along the edge, and you'll notice I'm also making sure that I'm blending that out into the blue. Okay, so now I'm adding in a medium green. This is a little bit of a cool green, and I'm just going along the edges and working nice and slow to emphasize some of the reflection and some of the highlights. I'm jumping in with a medium cobalt blue, and I'm using this color to emphasize the edges and how the icing has ripples as it falls over the edge of the donut. If you apply your colors, you can create a better contrast between lights and darks by making sure the transition areas have enough value change to see the changes in the areas. Always try and blend or fade your colors out as well so that they integrate better, not only the highlight, but blend into the base layers that you have already applied. Part of the icing are these tiny candy sprinkles in different colors. I want all the sprinkles to look like the highlights and shadows are coming from the same direction, so I added a cast shadow off the end part of them. You can see the highlight and the shadows being drawn. Remember to always consider your light source and which direction it's coming. Then draw from that position. You can even put a reference to the direction of your light somewhere off your paper so that you always remember where it is. As I work the areas on the side of the donut, I'll add in a dark blue to create shadows and shading. I'll blend that into the rest of the color layers to build up visual interest and lights and darknesses. What I'm doing at this point is using the medium blue at a pressure of 2 to keep layering the blue from the dark into the highlight. I simply switched out the dark blue for the light blue and blending it into the surrounding medium green layer that I've already applied earlier. This is layering for color mixing and an important part of working with colored pencils. Remember, go light with your pressure and layer, layer, and layer. I'll keep working on the sprinkles, making sure that they look three-dimensional, making sure that they have a highlight and a cast shadow, and then working with that medium blue. The next layer I'm incorporating is a medium green at a pressure of 2, and I'm blending that easily into the surrounding blues. I'll then mix that layer with a light blue, and then I'll come back with a dark green as I keep working my way around the donut shape. Now I'm moving on to the second part of the icing. It's going to be treated the same way as the first. I'll use the dark green and medium blue to edge around that big highlight, and I can't emphasize enough how important having a good pencil sharpener can be to do really crisp, sharp edges, subject areas like highlights. And I'm going to edge that big highlight, and I want to really emphasize how important it is to have a good sharpener on hand. I use a handheld sharpener all the time. I have used electric and battery sharpeners in the past, but for me the best sharpening is with the handheld. Not only is it faster, but I have the flexibility to change out the blades on a regular basis, which I do probably about once or twice a week. I love that. My favorites are M&R, Mobius and Rupert, Coombe, and Faber-Castell. The front part of the icing is where the fun is. Using the mix of colors, greens and blues, you can build up the form. Remember, consider your light source, in this case from the left, and how the highlights will create shadows on the opposite side. Use darker colors like the dark blues and greens in these areas and then blend them in together into the lighter colors, or use lighter pressure as you go towards the lights. I'm going to draw in the reflection of the table and plate seen on the side of the donut icing. Reflections create wonderful opportunities for us artists to take note of how our subject is always affected by what is happening around it. In this case, I'm introducing white as a blending method to help to emphasize that reflection and make the highlights on the icing stand out. We don't have to go stark white, but a good layer of white over the base colors blends that darker colors towards those highlights. Most times, subjects don't exist in a bubble, and getting those reflections correct is a super fun way to inject realism in our work. For example, if we look at this image of donuts sitting on a table with lots of other objects around it, can we see that the colors are being changed by those other objects? Layering is an effective way to introduce a variety of colors from other objects or light sources, and blending techniques are the methods to get those layered colors to work for us. I'm continuing to add more layers of the blues and greens and blending them together, working at a pressure of about a 1 or 2 over most of the drawing. Here I'm going to be working with a light green, a dark blue, and a medium blue, and I'm going to work between a pressure of a 1 and a 2. It's at this stage that I'm going to start with the blending tools. This one is Prismacolor Colorless Blending Pencil. I'm using it all over the surface of the icing. Remember that as you work with a blending pencil, it's no different than working with a regular pencil. It does put down a layer of binder, and in this case, the binder is wax-based. More importantly, what is happening is that the fibers on the paper are being flattened. You'll need to pay attention to this as you layer your work. The more layers you add, the more the fibers get crushed. This process can lead to you getting a very slick surface that will resist more layering and blending. You can avoid this by going light with your pressure and build up slowly. The blending pencil can be applied light as well. You don't need to press too hard to make it work for you. A pressure of 2 is good enough. I'm continuing to add layers of blues and greens, and pay attention to the color bubbles as I give you the pressures I'm working on as well. As I come to the end of the drawing, the final work of blending comes into play. I'm using a combination of whites, blending pencil, blender marker, OMS, or odorless mineral spirits, and my objective is to try to eliminate the tooth of the paper completely. This is the opposite of the dough that we did earlier. The white is used for highlights, and the blending pencil and OMS are used to make the icing look more real. And voila, our realistic donut drawing with blue icing is complete. By using these different color pencil blending techniques, blending for textures and for shine, one, when you're done, you'll simply enjoy. Remember, practice makes perfect, so don't be afraid to experiment and try out these techniques on your own. And as always, if you enjoyed this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more arts inspiration. Thanks for joining me today, and I can't wait to see you in our next video. Happy drawing!